actually, for any of you who don't know this map, this is GSL Whirlwind that I'd like to introduce before the players. It has a lot of open spaces in the middle, and in particular, it has big, fat, wide-open ramps that have made Baneling, Zergling, busts much, much more popular.
Yeah, just any forms of aggression can be devastating with these huge ramps, especially if you take your third too quickly. That's a landmine, an insane place to actually put on aggression.
Yeah.
So we shall introduce our players. Why don't you take it away, Sean?
Spawning in the top right corner, the German from Team Alternate Attacks, it is Delphi.
And spawning down in our bottom right-hand corner here as our blue Terran. He goes by the name of EGThorZaINRC. So, he's going to wall off to kick things off, potentially. I wouldn't be surprised if we just saw another command center first from ThorZaINRC. All the Terrans in the world are now like,
why
command
not?
center first or die trying. So,
Why not? Why not go for command center first? I challenge you. It's kind of funny, though. 4-player maps tend to be some of the best maps to actually go for this ridiculous kind of 4-pool, 6-pool, 10-pool. 4-pool, you know, if you're playing Brood War. Just due to the fact that it's difficult to scout, and 4-player maps tend to be where players make the most bold metagame plays.
I always liked the idea of going for a 4-pool in StarCraft 2. You end up killing 2 of your own drones, then mining, then going for the spawning pool, just to make it super hardcore. If anybody made that work, I'd be so happy.
That would be pretty sweet. I really like the attempts for players to translate impossible to translate Brood War strategies to StarCraft 2. Oh, it feels so great.
It's got to be done. It's got to be done.
Yeah, I mean, there is the 1-base lurker with slow drop. Maybe there's some sort of 1-base slow roach drop. Maybe?
It's going to be very... Like, I'm imagining it against some kind of mech play, and it's just like floating slowly towards the mech plane. The Thors are out microing the slow drop. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Looks like we're seeing standard play out of Delphi, the early expand. I'd be interested to see another attempt to mech from ThorZaINRC on this map, because it functions well on this map for different reasons than the standard reasons mech are good. So, for instance, normally it's because there's closed off spaces and you can go for easier pushes. There's not a lot of counterattacks. But here, there's enough different angles where Hellion counterattacks are extremely, extremely strong. All those big open spaces. And there's many expansions nearby each other, so it's easy to defend them all. So it's something that we saw MVP execute pretty reasonably well on this map. Love to see ThorZaINRC do it. And with that early second geyser we see going down, it looks like it may very well be that mech play.
Yeah, that's something that is relatively scary here. It's just if the bases can be, yes, there's the 3 bases that are very close to one another, but from that point on, Zerg ideally wants to be 1 base up against the Terran. So if the Terran ends up securing themselves 3 bases as well, Delphi's going to want to be on 4 bases, and then it's where that 4th base dynamic comes in, where, you know, for the 4th base onwards dynamic, where the Hellion aggression, as you well pointed out, is very, very deadly. So we'll have to see if ThorZaINRC wants to go for that. But I won't be surprised if he... Oh, there we go. He is actually going to go for the starport. So there's all the potential in the world that he could go for that mech play.
Well, we are seeing the switch off again. The very, very risky single Marine in the bunker. And Delphi's going for this aggression right off the bat. He's going for the Roach Ling type play. And we saw that this was potentially game losable for ThorZaINRC earlier on. These are the exact kinds of attacks that end up winning. So we're seeing Delphi do not a flood of backup units, but a flood of drones, and we'll soon have enough to get either the layer or Ling speed. There's Ling speed. Oh, this is going to be really tough for ThorZaINRC. ThorZaINRC hasn't even spotted it yet.
Well, no, he did get it with one of the Hellions. It ended up dying to the Roaches, but you're right. It is going to be very, very tough. The one thing that's going to be useful for ThorZaINRC in this situation is the fact that eventually he will have a Banshee out. So that's, once again, in a very similar vein to how Mutalisks work against units that can't shoot up. He's just going to put a timer on them. So He's going to raise the depots and try and stall out for now. Just is that one Banshee to try and start nibbling away at this force.
But the real goal for Delphi is to pick off workers, and we're seeing a lot of those workers pile up at the front. Delphi's more than happy to kill those off. Even a few workers still mining away obediently at the natural expansion. It does end up falling. Delphi really detour down. He really needs to make a quick detour and kill off those extra SCVs at the front line. He's killed 7. Would love to kill just around 2 or 3 more. There goes 1. And bursting right up into the main base. This is going to be terrible for ThorZaIN to just lose a few more.
Oh, yeah, you're right. He needs to be picking off the SCVs. The few Zerglings did flood in to try and get some, but ThorZaIN microed them back quite nicely, and now he's even just going to micro them back to that natural to get that good spread across the 2 bases. So it's 33 workers to the 39 right now, with Delphi just slightly in the lead. He's getting his layer down as well as those gas geysers, so I won't be surprised if we just saw Delphi swing into that Mutalisk wave again.
At this point in time, Delphi's doing the reasonable play, getting himself up Spore Crawlers. Just defend, 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 macro, 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 macro. The kill off of the SCVs delays ThorZaIN's transition. Right now, ThorZaIN is not going to have any trouble producing Hellions 2 at a time and producing Banshees 1 at a time, but it's that step up to getting the 3rd base and then adding on more factories. We see ThorZaIN already starting that up, but he's down 9 full workers, so he can't even quite afford to get extra gas geysers at his natural. He's stuck on Hellion Banshee for quite some time, and it looks like a single armory will be ThorZaIN's choice.
Ah, yeah, that's an interesting choice here. He's going to grab himself that 3rd base as well, in location, most importantly. So when is he going to throw down the 2nd armory? There has to be a 2nd armory at some point. Like, just a 1 armory build is so strange.
Well, I think this is quite smart from ThorZaIN. He's basically saying, well, you don't have a 3rd base, so I'm way ahead on the economy. What I'm way behind on is units. So I need to de-emphasize upgrades and re-emphasize just having some sort of stable, healthy set of units. And look at this, even telling the factory abandon ship, go straight for that tech lab.
And for now, we do have the extra tech lab being added on. Barracks goes down, spotting exactly what his opponent has, but he's just continuing that containment possibility at his front. Spire goes down once again for Delphi, as we predicted earlier. He just loves his Spire play in this matchup, but he doesn't stick with it 9 times out of 10, so... And he definitely shouldn't be sticking with it against ThorZaIN here. He's adding on the tech labs to those factories, along with the 2nd armory on the way, and an engineering bay for those missile turrets. Nom nom nom.
I also think he's going to be able to throw down a planetary fortress at his 3rd, which is just a brilliant decision. He really needs that up super soon. I mean, he just needs units. All around, he needs units. This was what all these drone kills did at the start of the game, was cut ThorZaIN back down on the units. And we're just seeing that play out so strongly here.
And the Hellions now trying to micro their best against these Zerglings, killing off what they can do. Even the Banshee there, for good measure, trying to pick away at those Zerglings, and they will kill them off eventually. ThorZaIN rocketing up in terms of macro very, very soon once this 3rd base is up and running. And with the double upgrades going down now, he's finding... Wait a minute, there's a 2nd Roach Warren going down. Oh, Delphi, you're on autopilot. No. Oh, well.
Yeah, that's always a little bit painful when you're like, all right, time to get these transitions set up so I can go both mutas and roaches. Oh, an orbital command at the 3rd base. I guess you could argue that ThorZaIN was kind of going for a stop-and-go thing. Like, all right, I'll build it. I might get the planetary if he goes mass roaches. I saw only lanes. All right, time to get an orbital. And here come in the Mutalisks. And even so, ThorZaIN is not looking to be in the best spot. He just started a turret in his main base.
Yeah, those Mutalisks hitting very hard. Now, they're going to get the tech lab here researching the siege upgrade, but that's also going to limit how many Thors his opponent will have access to eventually here to try and defend this. The missile turret gets up and running, and he's repairing it profusely, but he's actually losing quite a lot of workers here in the process. 25 workers killed.
I mean, just an insane amount of damage going down on the Swedish Terran. Delphi's doing an excellent job answering this mech play, and you know, this is the one issue with mech on this map that, especially from air, you see how tremendous the distance is between bases.
This is a little bit difficult for him. He's bouncing in between, and he loses quite a lot of his Mutalisk. But again, for the amount of SCVs he's actually killed off, that's a really good position for Delphi to be in across his 3 bases. And look at this, Hellions now moving over to the 3rd location here, trying to equalize up the odds. And they don't have Blue Flame just yet, but there's enough of them to kill off some drones.
They are effectively Blue Flame. They have the +1 attack upgrade, and there's 6 of them picking off all them drones, trying to even that worker killed score. Getting up to 15, might even get a shot off at the last one. Not going to get too risky, does want to escape with at least some of those Hellions alive. And now we're starting to see ThorZaIN produce a huge number of tanks, Hellions. He's getting +2 attack, +2 armor. He's finally starting to feel stabilized, can really use some turrets up at the north end of his base, as that is a very easy attack and defense line for Delphi.
Yeah, that's very, very true. You don't want anybody messing around near your production facilities. And again, that tech lab, without the siege tech, is very, very valuable right now. That siege tech would have been finished by now if that hadn't have died off. And ThorZaIN, without that, is going to be so vulnerable. Actually, might be vulnerable right now. Delphi pushing in, closing the gap so quickly, finding a lot of these Thors, and will be able to focus a ton of them down. ThorZaIN is in so much
Delphi looking sensational, even bringing the queens up into the fray for a little bit of extra transfuse, and those beefy queens can handle quite a set of punches. And perfect execution from Delphi. Wow, even getting a little overbold, going straight for that Thor. He's knocked down the efficiency of the 3rd. He needs to pull back and just clean the 3rd security up. It looks like he's decided that he's going to go straight for the jugular. He's swarming the front, and ThorZaIN is in good condition to be able to hold this off. I mean, he's going to lose a good set of units, but his 3rd is still alive, and most of the SCVs are still there.
He's actually not lost too many whatsoever, although it's still actually, no, 45 workers now being killed off here for Delphi, so getting quite a lot in the process. Behind this, it's 56 workers to 48, so it's still kind of even, and he will clean up the roaches for now, but that was painful. All those Thors being lost is a huge, huge investment, and oh, the units lost. Tab shows that, you know, if Terran has lost that much against the Zerg, it's gonna have a bad time.
I mean, it's... Oh, Delphi just not giving up at all. He's baiting ThorZaIN out, dragging him straight into more units, and all the while, Delphi's getting more upgrades. He's getting more tech. He's taking another expansion up at the top end. ThorZaIN is barely holding on just at his front.
Yeah, this is very, very scary here. Delphi putting on such a massive amount of aggression. Will continue to do it, even with Queens there to transfuse where he can. 2-2 on the way. Hive behind this, plus 10 drones as well. Closing the gap with the tanks constantly. But ThorZaIN saving that one last tank with SCV repairs. Really, really nice play. But the roaches just never stop, John.
Roaches for life. Roaches upon roaches upon roaches. Interestingly, though, look at the units lost tab. It's not as disparate as you might imagine. Look at the regular unit tab. You see pretty much no army for Delphi, but it's that 81 drone count that I think Delphi's been very clever and responsible about massing up. He's going for the Broodlord tech. Look at the contaminated flying orbital command.
Oh,
rarely ever do you get the treat of seeing that. That is totally sweet.
Scary stuff. It's like that haunted, on that StarCraft episode where there was the haunted academy. That was scary as well. Just as scary. So now.
Well, you know, I'm actually not the biggest fan of Broodlords against a meching player. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting conundrum to bring up because, you know, if you're a meching player and you get up to 3-3 with Javelin missiles, they actually do considerable damage to Broodlords. And he's going for that +3 weapons right now with those Thors. And the great thing about that is the Thors have the same range anti-air as the Broodlords, so you don't really need to close the gap that harshly. So I would agree. I like Ultralisks quite a bit in this situation.
Yeah, the Ultralisks are they're just excellent in terms of dealing with those huge sets of units. More of these Hellions just sweep on in. A burrow will temporarily save the lives of some of these, but a single scan later and a lot get roasted now up to 30. This is what ThorZaIN needs to do. There are those 4 Broodlords en route. Not as difficult to deal with mech as it is with bio, but still always a threatening force. The real reason why it's not as strong is the armor that all those metal units inherently have. I mean, like the Thor Has 3 armor. The little nibbles that the broodlings do aren't nearly enough to take things out ordinarily.
Yeah, they do cause a little bit of problems in terms of over-flooding eventually, but you're right, it can be a little bit tough to break. But with the position that Delphi's found himself in, and the economical standing he's found himself in, I think he's going to be in a pretty good spot, unless, of course, ThorZaIN can go for this aggression once again. Hellions constantly going for these counter pokes and finding a ton more drones. He's equalizing that worker count up quite well, especially with extra scans. It's deja vu as he kills off plenty more.
Well, that now brings the combined kill count up to 51. ThorZaIN's looking reasonably good for hanging in there. But the problem is that Delphi is also gathering more Broodlords. I mean, you look at the resource composition of Delphi, he's spending his leftover minerals on drones, and the bulk of his resources just stockpiling more and more Broodlords. So ThorZaIN is not exactly buying himself more time against the Broodlord push itself. So there we see those Broodlings working their way in. There's the scan, and only just now are Vikings starting to be created in large numbers.
And the Infestors and Corruptors are going to shut that down quite nicely if they're able to land the fungal growths in the infested Terrans, and they will land some of them. All the SCVs coming off the line here, trying to combat against this. Delphi in a position of power right now, shutting down all the anti-air of his opponent. It's those Javelin missiles that are going to try and keep ThorZaIN in this, as the SCVs all repairing themselves, trying to deny as much damage being done from the big meaty units that he has back home. And I just don't think he has enough anti-air to deal with those Broodlords now.
God, the Thors, though, buy so much time. The Broodlings really don't do that much damage against them, only dealing 6 per hit against 3 armor. I mean, that is just going to drop down so quickly. So ThorZaIN is getting the chance to maybe stabilize, but it's the Roche reinforcements from Delphi that are really starting to break through. The unsieged tanks, great decision from ThorZaIN. He's able to pick off all of those infestors, walk right up to them. They can't even run away, and it looks like ThorZaIN has managed to defend the attack, but I don't know if you'd even say that he's stabilized. His main is almost broke, his natural is almost broke, and his third is almost broke.
Yeah, he defended it, but off the back of it, you're right. He lost even more workers. He's lost a total of 78 across this entire game. He's got nothing to fall back on economically, and he's going to have to fly command centers everywhere to try and grab himself that little bit of an advantage in terms of the economy that he needs, but Delphi's not going to give him it. I'm pretty sure here Delphi's just going to repop with a lot of roaches now that he's limited how much mech his opponent can have, and roaches are always a really nice choice to go for when you've been able to trade some mech.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the sort of unit that it forces the forces the Terran in the same way that Broodlords force a Terran. You build Broodlords, and he obviously has to start flooding Vikings primarily to be able to deal with it. You start making roaches, he has to start flooding tanks. So literally, just by building the roaches, you buy significant time, and in this period, you can easily snatch up another base. Delphi down to 55 workers, given how many he's lost, but that excuse me, that top left main is still completely wide open. More infested Terrans get lobbed up, and oh, ThorZaIN does not have the tank count. Nice aggro play from Delphi, cleans it all up.
Wow.
And there's good game. Delphi ties the series up 1-1.